Okay, JP, since your form sucks, I went ahead and did some scouting for you to help you improve your form a little bit and maybe clean up your mechanics. So the very first part of a pitching delivery is called the drift. So let's go ahead and take a look at that now. I want you to direct your attention to me. Watch this front hip here. It starts about right there. As my knee comes up into a leg lift, you can see I drift forward probably 2 or 3 inches, right? Not too much, but just enough to where my body starts moving in the direction of the plate, right? So that's going to start creating potential energy to eventually turn into kinetic energy when I hit foot strike. Now let's look at yours. Your hip starts right up, that's pretty bad. Let's try that again. Your hip starts right about here. I lied. Right about there. As you go into leg lift, this hip not only doesn't stay there, it retreats a little bit, which means that you have energy flowing this way, and home plate's over here, buddy. So already your energy is not moving in a continuous stream towards the plate. All right, the next thing. As we get into leg lift, you can see here, this leg, it's got a slight bend to it. You know, it's an athletic position, so it's got up, little slight bend to it. But I'm mostly ramrod straight, right? This leg is nice and cocked in. Yours is like already bent, right? If your center of gravity was somewhere, it would be right about here. That's a pretty good center of gravity, but that's not the way you got there is pretty bad. My center of gravity is here. Your center of gravity should, be a little bit above your your back leg there. Let's erase the ink. Okay, so after my hip drift, right about there, my center of gravity is here, right? Just in front of my lead leg, pretty easy. Everything is nice and, this leg is nice and straight. This leg here, nice and straight. My body's in a pretty neutral position, but I'm starting to create potential energy. If we look at your body, you're already bending this leg. Your center of gravity is way too forward, which means there's no way you could create good energy. There's no way you could drive with this back leg. Your upper body is already starting to tilt backwards. It's just, this is a whole mess. So you need to keep this leg straight. Keep your body tucked in, nice and tight, right? Your hands are already drifting. Your hands are in a bad position. My hands nice and tight with my body. Everything's in a good position to succeed. You're already doing your ball separation. Your hands are weird. They're not close to your body. This is just you're leaking energy here and here and here and here. Your shoulders are tilted, especially if we go forward to here. Your shoulders and your hips are already tilted. My shoulders are level. My hips are level. You can't begin to rotate your hips until your hip socket is level. That your inner knee is going to turn in, your hips are going to rotate, and you're going to explode that way. But if you're tilted, that means you have to come level first before your hips can explode outwards. Okay, so that's the things wrong with your drift. Now, the second step is the drop. This step right here. Very first thing, your hips are already pointed open, or at the very least, they are not closed. Take a look at my hips. They are pointed that way. Let's look at our hip lead, right? So when you start out of your leg lift into your drop, this hip should be the thing leading, right? So if we look, it is the furthermost point of my body. All of my momentum is pointed at my hip. Let's check your hip, shall we? Oh, nope. This leg out here is already flying open. These hips are flying open, and you're leaking energy everywhere. So keep it nice and tight. Hip lead first. So this leg should be over here, like that. Like I said, your ball's already out of the pocket. Your arm's starting to open up. Mine is just coming out of the pocket. Yours is already way down here. All right, number 3 is the drive. So when you get to here, we're driving. Check this out. My knee is kind of like that. My leg is starting to come out, Shoulders nice and closed, hips nice and closed, balls separating, everything's great. Hips open, your knee flexed like that, which means you're already starting to rotate into your hip socket, but your hips aren't level and you're not even close to foot strike. Your foot's already way out here. Our lead legs are in about the same position, but our back legs are really where it gets important. Your torso's tilted too, and so your knee isn't going to be able to rotate into your hip because you're already open. So you're already losing the majority of your lower body power right here. Kill that. All right, next is foot strike. Boom, right there. Nothing matters in a delivery before foot strike because that's when you can start transferring energy down the kinetic chain. The very first thing I noticed, so at this point our hips are open, and the very first thing I noticed is that my leg is nice and long here. Yours has this huge bend in it. You could stride out another foot, all right? My foot's here, your foot's way back here. You could stride out another foot, which means that's this much more distance your body can travel, creating potential energy before foot strike. That's a ton of space. Okay, the next thing, your chest here. If you look at my front shoulder, I have this thing called scapular engagement, which basically is all it means is my shoulders are, my shoulder blades are curling backwards. Yours are totally flat and open. And the reason that is because I'm engaging with this arm and tucking it in. You are flying open with it. That, at the same time, is creating arm drag. If you see my arm here, it's nice and engaged. It's like a cocked gun. Yours is flying open out here. Your arm is dragging because you're not treating your feet, your legs, your hips, your chest, your shoulder, your elbow, and your hand as individual units. You're treating all of this as one part of the chain. So you're losing a ton of energy there. Like I said, your elbow and shoulder are the same. All right, let's keep going. Again, leg nice and extended. Yours, huge bend in it. That's all energy you're losing. Okay. Back it up just a little bit. Check out my chest. See how it's flexed? Ooh, that's a new color. See how it's flexed open like that? Yours is totally flat. There's no engagement here, right? My arm, your arm's straight on. My arm is cocked backward. You're treating your shoulders and your arm as one total unit. My shoulder is here. My arm is back here. Your shoulder is here. Your arm's straight on. So it's like a bullwhip, right? So when you stop the whip with your foot strike, all of this should go forward. But instead of going down the chain, right, going down the bullwhip, yours is just, it's almost like throwing the entire whip at one time instead of letting all the energy travel down to the actual weight at the end of the whip. Okay. On release, we look pretty similar, so good job. All right, last big thing. Check out my arm. Tucked in, right? What that does, if we can go back here. Look at my arm. It starts here, tucks here, tucks in, right? Your arm is down here at this point. So if we take a look at that, your arm is here, flies down here, flies back here. My arm, here, here, and still here. See how much wilder this looks than this looks? This is nice and compact. I'm using it to engage my scaps. I'm using it to engage my shoulders. I'm even using it here to engage my chest. See how I'm pulling it backwards? You fly open with it, which not only is going to pull your pitch that way because your shoulders are flying, but it means you're not using it to engage your upper body at all. All All right, the last part is the follow through. Right here. Check it out. We look pretty much the same here. As I start to come up, my eyes are still on the target. Your head's flying open. Your shoulders are flying open. My arm's nice and loose, nice and long. Yours is kind of flipping around. But most importantly, right here. This is called a leg block. My leg is like the brakes of a car. When you hit the brakes, everything in the car flies forward. If the car has airbags, things don't fly forward as hard. You're putting airbags on your car, which is normally a good thing, but in this case it's not. By not following through, you're losing all of this space to move energy. That's so much. It's like a foot of extra body movement you could have before you release the ball. My body can physically go no further. My leg is blocked. It's a hard front end, right? My leg is totally straight. I'm on top of my knee. Whereas your back leg is back here. There's no lower body commitment. This should be flying open. This leg should be totally straight. This hand should be tucked in. You should be nice, and here's my body position, nice and compact. Whereas your body position is something more like this. Right? Which one looks nicer? Nice and compact and mechanically efficient, or just wild and thrown open? And finally, the finish here. You fly backwards, which means you're not moving with the energy. You're fighting intentionally against the energy. You don't watch me. I'm here. I flow with the energy and around. My foot comes around, rotating over my blocked leg, and I flow around the mound. If we watch you finish releasing, you here, you stumble back to here, and then you're back here on the mound. I'm off the side of the mound. You're back halfway to where you started. How does that make sense mechanically? If you were transferring energy, wouldn't you expect, if you're talking about a river, you would expect all of the movement in the river, if there was a turn in it, to follow the turn, right? That's kind of what I'm doing. There's a turn in my river, and all the water's going whoop, turning and going back around, right? All the energy is flowing in one nice direction. Your river, however, instead of flowing in one nice direction, your river goes whoop, and then doubles back in on itself. That's not how energy operates in nature. And throwing is a very natural motion, which means you're fighting nature. You can't be a good pitcher fighting nature, JP.